Hi everybody, welcome to Palette Knife Painting. Today we are going to be making a oceanscape to make your own paradise, your own colors, and just bring this canvas alive. What you will be working with will be acrylic paint with paste. The paste will thicken it up and give it some texture. Also it stretches out your paint as well. So what you'll do is you'll put some on your plate and you'll make different colors. If you need to use several plates, that's fine. I usually use mini plates if I'm working with acrylics. And you just mix it up. Whatever color it is you want to use. And you can see with the gels or the paste, it holds the color very well. So you don't have to worry about the color being too watered down. Now let's talk about our tools real quick before we get started. What we're working with are palette knives. And palette knives, unlike brushes, you've got to clean. So once I get my palette knife dirty, I have to clean it with a piece of toilet paper. I usually keep a garbage handy. Bam, right in there. Okay. Palette knives come in many different sizes. These are some of my most used sizes. They go from 1 inch to 1 1/4 up to 2 1/4 and 3 1/4. You can get them at all different shapes and sizes. These two are generally what I'd usually use. This is 2 1/4, 1 1/4. Now today I'm going to be working with oil paint, although I know the tutorial's about acrylic. I prefer to use in oils. I gave you the paste or the gel so that you can sort of mimic the same properties that the oil will do on the canvas. So I'm using a canvas right here of my cadmium yellow, all of my different pale yellows, my whites, my reds, and my blues. I use a little sap green, but not much because I generally like to mix all my own greens firsthand. Now I'll do some mixing on here. A lot of times the mixing is done on the board. Either way is good. You'll have a lot of academics that'll tell you you always have to mix all your paint regardless. You know what? I found out in art you could do what you want to do and do what feels good. I like my colors to pop really loud. So let's get started. First thing you want to do is determine your light. We're going to have a sunset right over here. When I do this with a palette knife, I keep my hand nice and loose. I don't keep it very sturdy. Sometimes it'll move on you. And the reason why we're doing white, the light colors first. Okay, sorry, we had a problem with the computer for just a second. All right, we're going to use the white light colors first. Excuse me. The reason behind this is if you go from dark to light, it tends to muddy everything up. It's easier to go from light to dark. So we're going to start with that. So I'm going to play like my sunset is somewhere around here, and I'll just simply put this stuff on here, and I'll probably have some popping through some clouds up here. Now this canvas is a little bit bigger than the canvas you're using right now, and so I've got to go a lot faster. Now I want my water to be right about below half, because you generally see more of the sky than anything. So we're gonna have that come down a little bit more. Now at this point, this is where it gets tricky. You got to sort of figure out where it is that you want your light to be shining through on the water, because we're going to create water right here. You want it a little wider as it gets towards you and not so much as back, because we want to create a contrast between this light and the dark that we put here. Alright, now I don't scrape it all off, and you'll see that I've got little braces here to try to keep my canvas away from my easel. so that I can get there with my palette knife. Now, I'm going to clean off my palette knife just because I want to keep the paint very pure. Now I'm going to use cadmium yellow. You can use any color you like I said, but you try to follow the way that the lights will reflect in a sunset. It'll generally go from yellow, a little orange, and then straight into like an Alzarian red. All right, and I'll just keep it nice and loose. I'll let this palette knife do a lot of the construction for me. And I don't worry about getting too much orange because I can come back and just rub that in. And sometimes it's good to get that extra orange in there. Keep my edges clean. I'm not going to put too much orange toward, I call it orange. Sorry. This is cadmium yellow. All right, put some on. Okay, now what I'm going to do is just take a little through here. Now this ocean right here will make more sense to you the further we go with this. Now remember, things further away, purplish, you get closer, you're going to get cooler. So we're going to have a little bit of sky going on up here. Make sure you cover those edges, get all that paint on there. And you don't have to worry about constructing too much right now. We're just trying to get paint all over this thing. All right. Now I could clean my brush here, but I got so much paint on there I don't want to waste it. So I'm going to bring it down. And usually when I'm doing the first part of the water, I'm keeping it straight up and down. And it's going to get colder as it gets closer to us. We can feel the coldness of that water. The mixing will come in a little bit. Don't fret. Now I'm going to scrape it pretty clean right there, because I'm going to go back over that with some reds here in just a second. And try not to put too much of this blue on here, because if you do, it's going to muddy this sucker up. Alright. Now, these clouds, we got a little bit of rain clouds going. So let's and they're sort of falling away. All right. Add some depth to it a little bit. Okay. Now we need to create a purple for far away. But first, let's add this reds. This red, I'm going to put, just work it in, cover. If you see it starts getting dirty, you can just pull that off. Add a little bit more. Alright. Add just a little bit more of this darker yellow there. I'm grabbing some Naples just to give it a more faded effect at the back. This is going to be where our water level is. Alright. We'll mix that in a bit, so that won't be a big issue. Now let's, we need to finish up our sky here. So now we're going to bring in some reds, get that contrast going. I usually would use Alzarian red at this moment, but I that I am out. That doesn't happen a lot. Okay, we're out of Alzerian red, so we're going to have to make do with what we got. So I'm going to take some of this deep red here, and just a little bit, make me a little purple here. I'm going to take a little bit of this purple I just made, because I want a little purple in the sky, but not too much. And I'm going to come up with it right now. I'll come back. By keeping the paint nice and wet, you can create whatever you want. If you don't like it, you can come back and change it up. So we're still just trying to cover this sucker. Alright. I'll create the contrast in just a little bit between the water and the sky. Alright. Let's add some more reds here. And if you see, I'm not studying too hard where it goes. I've done a lot of these, probably around 75, 80 of them. I'm not sure really. And I just seem to know which way works best at times. Luckily, I'm starting to learn more and more. So, all right. And take some of this deep blue, deep purple, more of a scarlet, and create a border between our water and our sun and our light source. All right. I tend to like to go back with my finger and just sort of smear that in. Gives it that blurred distance look. And I can... Alright, so now at this point we've got pretty much paint everywhere on this thing. And now what we can do is start to sculpt it. By sculpting it, what we're going to do is manipulate this paint around. Make it interesting, make it into something at this point. Right now we just have paint on a canvas. Just pretty colors on a canvas, that's about it. We got to make some art. To make art, you got to give it content. Got to keep it interesting. If something don't work, take it off, start over. Now I'm sort of mixing my colors on the canvas. I started doing this when I researched Monet, Renoir, all the Impressionists, Cézanne, and a lot of times these guys would mix right on the canvas. So it's sort of a contemporary way of doing Impressionism, I guess you could say. Create this cloud-like effect right here. And I'm just letting my knife run right across it. I'm not pressing. I'm just almost like layering a really thin layer on a cake. Because if you press too hard, it's going to take the paint right off of there and you're going to lose your effect. Again, still using toilet paper to help keep my palette knife, and I'm still using my big palette knife until I finish this part. Let's see. Now, as things are further away, of course, they're going to be skinnier as far as when you're talking about clouds and stuff. So I tend to use the edge more. All right. Okay. I'll lighten that up a little bit, so I'll just add some white right to it. I'm using my palette knife as a big bulky brush. Slowly adding color. We got to break away of the clouds sort of moving around here. So this is, we're going to call this After the Storm. I like that. It's sort of breaking away, and we're going to see a new light coming through. I don't want to do too much. That top is looking pretty good by itself. Add some. Now here, what I do is called bouncing. At least that's what I call it. So I tend to make my own terms as I go. Now, on screen, I can see right here a little movement that I don't like, how it's moving around there. So let's add a little white, a little caddy red. Let's get some little pinkish going on here. Just bouncing off those bottom of those clouds. And I'm just sort of letting that knife bounce across there. I'm not taking up any paint. I'm literally layering it right over the other. Okay? Let's add a little bit deeper red there. Okay. And don't be afraid to come back and add some yellows in places that maybe you didn't think it should be. If you don't like it, if it doesn't get the effect you want, again, scrape it off. Main thing is to create interesting colors, contrast. Now a lot of people will tell you this is hard on the eyes. It's very unsoothing. But in fact, studies have showed that with the mixture of these colors, the way that I'm doing it, actually relaxes people. It's sort of weird. You would think bright colors would do the opposite, but these are really not going to do that. Okay, so here we've got a semi-sky. We could go back and do things to it, but now we got to add the water. We've only got a few minutes left, so let's do this fast. You can take your palette knife, and what you're going to do is you're going to scrape back and forth. So we're going to start right here, and we're going to create an ocean. I'm going to start with the lights, just barely going into the reds. This is mixing all kinds of ways that with a brush would take you forever to do. I hardly ever use a brush anymore, except to sign my name. And I've started using paint markers for that. So I'm really getting away from doing any type of painting with a brush. It takes too long. I have a short life. Those two things, long and short life, don't mix. So I'm not going to waste all my time with a brush when I can do it with this. So now I'm going to start back here, way back in the distance. And I'm going to slowly come down. Slowly, but I'm going real fast. And I'll watch my colors. If they start to muddy up, and take some of that dark in there, all the way into that light. If they start muddying up too much, I'll back off and just clean my knife. But generally, I like to paint dirty at this point. That's what it's called when you don't clean your knife. You know, riding dirty. This is painting dirty. All right. Now, over here, same thing. And you would finish this up on that side. Now, at this point, I could come in here, put a little boat. I could put an island. I could put whatever I want. This is how you can make a palette knife painting in 20 minutes. Thank you for watching us. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Have a good day.